Hi everyone, welcome back to the channel. Today we are going to discuss about the 2022.10 UiPath Studio updates. So recently UiPath has released the 2022.10 update and it has impacted almost all the major components of UiPath across the lifecycle, which we are going to see in this slide. This video is dedicated to the updates which has happened particularly on the UiPath Studio. If I talk about the agenda, we are going to see what exactly is the overall release theme for this release. I'm going to tell you about what is a coach mark navigator, and at the end we are going to spend majority of the time in the new update which is called a data manager. This video is more focused towards the developer community. So if you are coming from a developer background, so I believe that data manager is something which is a major enhancement for you. This is the first video in this series. In the upcoming videos, I would try to pull up more of the updates, explain it in a easier way for your references. So in case if you are coming to the channel for the first time and you haven't already subscribed, please consider subscribing to the channel to get the latest and the new updates. Having said that, let's get started with the first topic, which is the release theme for 2022.10. So this release is focusing on 4 major areas. The first one being rapidly build your next generation business apps and automation. The second one being a new foundation for continuous discovery. The third one, enhanced platform intelligence power more use cases, and the fourth one being enterprise grade for the most demanding IT. This is the overall theme. If I move forward, this is the complete life cycle of an RPA: discover, build, manage, run and engage. And at the bottom you see all the UiPath products which are being used, such as in the discover you have automation hub, process mining, task mining. For the build, you have Studio, Studio X, document understanding, integration services, and so on and so forth. In this release, we are seeing an update in most of the items which you see on the screen. This video, I am going to target mostly on the update which is happened on the UiPath Studio front. So in case you are a developer, you need to follow along and see how exactly this update is giving you more features and more flexibility in the automation. So the first thing, UiPath has got something which is called Coach Mark Navigator, or also known as the Quick Tour. Now what exactly is this thing? Whenever you update your studio to 2022.10, UiPath Studio will actually guide you about the complete interface. It will guide you to build, test and run your automation. Also, it will guide you to publish your own project. Now this feature is available both for Studio and Studio X. Let me quickly show it to you how exactly this thing looks and how you can rewatch the tutorial in case you have skipped it, right? So for that, I am going back to my UiPath Studio. I am into my UiPath Studio. To see a look and feel of the new Navigator, all you have to do is come to your studio, click on this help button, and you would see something which is called a quick tutorial, which is asking you learn the concept of automation in UiPath Studio in 2 minutes step-by-step guide. If I simply click on this one, you would notice that I am getting a pop-up here and it is guiding me to start my UiPath journey. So it is saying me that step 1 of 1 is to click on this process. I say start and I say that this is my first process. So I simply go here and I write here the process name like this and hit create. Once I have created the solution, you would see that next it is telling me that do you want to have a quick tour of the complete thing or no. At any point of time, you can always go and click on this step which says skip this step and it will stop this complete tutorial. But if you simply say start, once you click on start, you would notice now the guided access is taking you through all the important panels, such as the project panels enable you to manage the project file, dependencies, configure the project settings. I hit next. Step 2 of 7, this is the designer panel where you can actually drag and drop all these activities, right? Next, it will talk you about the activities panel, talking about the command panel. It will tell you about the data manager, the ribbon, everything in a guided manner. So this was about a quick tour. If you want to take a tour about how do you build, test and run your automation, you can simply go here and click on this button which says start, and it is telling you that add your first activity. I hit next, and now it will actually guide you to add an activity and publish this automation also to the orchestrator and run it from there. So you are free to explore it. I'll simply go and close this one, and I'll say skip this step, right? And I'll close this. That is how you can close it. And I say yes. In case you want to re-enable it, you just have to go to the home, click on this button help, and say quick tutorial. So that is the first thing which you would see in the latest version of the 2022.10 update, known as the guided access. So that was a quick overview of the Coachmark Navigator or the quick tour. You can always skip this part, and to re-enable you just have to go to the backstage view, help, and the quick tutorial. Moving forward, in the UiPath Studio, you would see a new panel now, which is called a data manager. Now, this is an entirely new thing which has come up in this release. Data manager is now available in Studio, and it is a one-stop shop for managing all the resources from variables, argument, assets, queues, processes, everything. If you are already familiar with UiPath Studio, you might have noticed that we have different panels for managing the variables, for argument, queues, assets, resources, entities, namespaces. We have to go to different places. With this data manager, UiPath Studio has clubbed everything into a single place. Now let us see in UiPath Studio where exactly I can find this data manager panel, and then we will explore slowly and gradually that what exactly are the options and how to use it. Once you open a project in UiPath Studio, on the right hand side you would see something which is called a data manager. So you simply have to click on here, and this will open a data manager panel for you guys, right? So this is how it looks in the first attempt. Now you might be thinking, Mukesh, you told that it is responsible for managing all the resources in one place, but I am seeing only variable, constants and the connections. Where are the other things? So the first thing here, whenever you open the data manager, what you have to do is you have to click on this button which says data manager filters, and you can come here and select all the things which you want to see in the data manager. So for example, I want to see the namespace, queues, assets, processes, entities, resources, arguments. Now you would notice this is a single place where I can actually manage all of these things. We are going to explore all of these things in a detailed one by one manner. So the first feature of the data manager is you can simply go here and click on this filter button, and you can simply choose what you want to see in the data manager. As simple as that, right? So this option is called the filter option. So this is what I was talking about. You have an option which is called filter option. You simply have to go to the data manager. You can click on this and you can select for variables, arguments, constants, resources. Also, you can manage the orchestrator resources such as queues, assets, processes, everything, right? Importing and removing namespace also can be done with the help of data manager, right? So the first option which you need to remember here is the filter option in the data manager. The next thing which every one of us do is we create variables and arguments whenever we start any automation. Now with the new data manager, there are various ways of creating a variables and creating the arguments. That is what we are going to see next. Okay, I am back into my UiPath Studio. The first way of creating the variable, which you guys might be already aware of, is by using this panel at the bottom. You simply click on any of the XAML, you click on the variables, you click here and you start creating the variable like this, right? This is one of the traditional way. Then we used to hit Ctrl+K and create the variables, right? Now, how do I create the variables with the help of data manager? So you go to the data manager, and here there are two ways of creating the variable. The one is you click on this button which says new, and I select new variable or new argument, right? So it's V for variable and A stand for argument. I click on the new variable. What do you want to name the variable? I say that I want to have the variable as str_name. That's it. What is the data type? This exactly is the same. What type of data you want to store in the variable, that you guys already aware of. So I just select string. What is the scope of the variable? As of now, I only have one, and then we have something which is called global. So this is also an update. So as of now, I'll park for that. So we'll explain that in the later part of the video. So as of now, if you notice, I have only one scope, which is the main. So I just select main. Do you want to have a default value? Let's say I want to have a default value as Mukesh. So I go here and I click Ctrl+S. Now if you go back to the data manager, you would notice that the variable is available inside the variable panel. To have a better visibility, let me just quickly go and uncheck all of this, and let's see only the variables, right? So I have created a variable by clicking on this button, and let's say in this main I have a sequence, and this sequence is let's say I'll call it as input sequence. It can be anything, right? So I'll just write here input sequence. Let's say I have one more sequence here, and this sequence I'll call at process. Okay, I have two sequences, and then let's say I have one more sequence here. This sequence I'll call it output. So what I have done, I have created three sequences in the main XAML file. Now let me go back again to the data manager. One way of creating the variable, which we have already seen, was to click here. The other way is you just go to the variables, expand it, and you would have this button which says new variable. Click on that and provide the variable name. Let's say I want to create a variable to store the age. So I will say int_age. This is of data type integer. Now you would see there is something which is called scope. Which scope you want to have this variable? Let's say I only want to have this variable in the input scope. That's it. That is how easy UiPath has made it for us to change the scope of the variables. Now what is happening here? If you would see, the name variable is available at the complete main, and the age variable is available only in the input scope. If I come back to my automation, let me just click on this one variable panel, and you would see when I click on the input, I am seeing age and the name, right? Because it is at the main level and it is at the input level. Whereas when I click on the process level, I do not see the age variable, right? Because that is created in the scope of input. If I want to change the scope, you simply can come here and change it to process. Now in the process, I can see the other variable as well, right? So previously we used to change the scope everything from here. Now all of this thing can be done from the data manager directly from the variable panel here. So these are the two ways you can create a variable. You can go here, click on this button and click on new variable. Same applies for the argument also. If I have to create an argument, I'll go here, create a new argument, and you would see now it is not showing me the argument panel. That is the reason. I'll go here and say arguments. Now we can see the argument panel. There is no arguments here. Let's try to create one. I'll go here, create a new argument. I'll call this argument, let's say, as in_last name. Direction is in, it is a string, it is a type required, and do I want to have a default value? These options are exactly the same. The same way I was using this button, you can always use this button to create an argument as well, right? So you can always create out argument as well. Let's say out_school name, right? Now the direction can be decided directly from here. And what is the data type? Let's say it is of string. Is it require? And if you see here, when you create out argument, you do not have a default value, right? So that is again coming from the same concept, right? When you are argument type is out, you cannot have a output value, right? So you cannot have a default value, sorry. So that's why you cannot have a default value here. So this is what we have seen. You can use this button, create new variable, new arguments, or you can simply go to the wizard and say new variable and new argument. And this is the old one which you can always utilize. Next, there is an option in the setting of the newer version where you can actually decide to work only on the data manager panel. Now, what does that mean? Let me go back to my UiPath Studio. Now, if you see, as of now in my UiPath Studio, I have this variable and arguments here as well. I have this variable manager and variable arguments and imports here as well. Now, I can always go back to the home settings. In the design, you have this option which says show data manager panel only, which means that I only want to work on the data manager panel, which is the latest one, and I do not want to see the traditional import arguments and the variable panel which is coming at the bottom, which is this one. So let me quickly show you how does that look like. I'll go to the home, I'll go to the design, and I toggle this to on. Show data manager panel only is set to on. Do you want to apply the changes? I can say yes, and I say reload. Now you would notice UiPath will actually reload our project as per this setting. Now if you enable this setting, what would happen? You will actually not see the variable arguments and the import panel at the bottom, right? So that is the other thing which you can actually go and try it out. In case you are still want to use the old panel, you can use it. But if you want to stick only to the data manager panel, you can always go and enable this setting. So this also answer one of the question. What happens if someday you come to your UiPath Studio and you do not see the variables argument and the import panel? That is because you have toggled this setting on. Okay, so that is one thing which you need to take care with this update, that you can actually go and work only on the data manager panel. So this is how it looks like, right? You just have to go to the design tab, and this is the setting which you just have to toggle it on. Settings, design, show data manager panel only. Next, this version gives you an option to bulk create of variable and arguments. When I say bulk create, sometimes there is a requirement where as a developer I need to create many variables. Now when I am creating more variables, it becomes tedious task to work on the old variable panel. UiPath has given this wonderful update to us where we can actually create variables and arguments in bulk. How does that work? Let me quickly show it to you in the UiPath Studio. Here you see this variable and the argument panel, right? You just right click on the variable and you would have an option which says bulk create variable. If I click on the bulk create variable, you would see the two variable which I have already created, name and age. I want to create more. Let's say I want to create for int underscore blood group, and let's say this is of type string. I want to create one for int underscore, let's say phone number, and this I want to have an integer. Now one interesting thing available here is that you can actually work on scope for the multiple variables directly here. You do not have to go back to each and every variable and this changes, right? So I believe that all of this name, age, background and phone should come in the input scope. So I can just go here and change it to input. Later I realized that name is something which I want to use in the complete workflow. So let me just go and change it to the main. As simple as that, right? So absolutely easy to use. You just have to come to the multiple imports. You just go here and create it. In case you want to remove, just click on this close button and that will delete the variables from here, right? So like this. Once you are done, simply close this. So that is how you can create multiple variables at once. Same thing applies to the arguments. Right click on the arguments and say bulk create arguments. In, out, add a new argument. I would say that this is for int underscore, let's say class, and this is an out argument, this is in out argument, this is in argument. You can decide here. provide the default value here that this is for the class 10 maybe, right? And once you are done, you can add, remove, change the settings and just close it. As simple as that, right? So with the help of new update, we can actually create bulk variable and argument. You simply have to right click on the context menu and you will find an option of bulk create variables and bulk create arguments. I hope you are following along, and same like me, I believe you also like the bulk feature of the UiPath variable update. If that is the case, just comment bulk in the comments so that I know that you guys actually like this feature. You just have to comment bulk. Moving forward, the next feature which UiPath Data Manager provide is sort and edit variable or argument panel, right? Now, what exactly is this thing? This is a pretty interesting feature, I would say, and which whenever we are working on a wider or a complex workflow, this will be very useful, right? So let me quickly go back to my UiPath Studio and demonstrate that. I am back into my UiPath Studio. So if you go to the variable panels, you can see that I have got 3 variables, and this is at the main, this is at the input level, and this is also at the input level. If you see here on the variable panel, if I simply go and right click on this, you would have an option which says sort by. How do you want to see the variable? This has a good thing. If I just sort it by name, you will see it is getting sorted alphabetically. If you go here, sort it by type, the integer one are coming first, then followed by the string one. The good part is you can actually sort it by scope as well. Now what would happen? The first two, the name is at the main, input and input, right? So it is actually sorting the variable as per the scope. The main is the wider scope, then it has input. So first you will see all the variables which are inside in the main scope, and then you will see all the variables which are at the child level or the child sequences, right? It's absolutely simple, right? Go here, sort by type, scope, name, and if I name it to default, it will go back to the default settings. The same option is applicable to the arguments as well. So you simply right click on it and sort by. Now in case of arguments, we do not have the scope. The argument has something which is called direction. So if I just sort it by direction, what would happen? You would notice that the in are coming first and then followed by the out. The same way you can sort it by name, you can sort it by the type, right? Which is available here, and all these options are available. So this is an option which is pretty useful when we want to sort the variables and the argument, right? Now, one question arises, we have created a lot of variables. In case I want to edit the variables or the arguments, how should I do it? Now let me show you how actually you can edit a variable. So let me go back to my UiPath Studio. In the data manager, let's say I want to edit this variable. So I simply click on this variable, expand it here, and you would see just by double clicking on it, it gives you an option to edit it. Let's say I want to change the name of the variable to phone num. So I just go here, I can provide a default value like this to the variable like this. That's it. The variable is updated. You can always right click on the variable and you have this option which says edit variable, that will open the same panel as well, right? So right click on it and click edit variable. Same is applicable to the arguments as well. You can expand it, double click on it to edit, or you can simply right click on it and you simply can say edit. Okay. If you just simply want to rename it, just go here and select rename. That also works, right? So that is how you edit the variables and the arguments. You can just open this context menu, change the settings here, and that's it, right? To sort it, you just have to use this option which is sort by. Okay. I hope you like this feature. Let me know in the comments. Let me just move forward and show you the next one, which is the group item by scope. Now this is a pretty interesting feature which I found. This is applicable only to the variables because for the arguments you do not have the scope. For the arguments you only have the direction, you do not have the scope. Now how does this actually work? Let me show it to you in the UiPath Studio. In the top of the data manager, you would see this option which says group items by scope. If you notice the variables now, the variables are like this: name, age and phone number. We have seen one option where I can actually sort it by the scope. The other option is you can simply click on this button which says group item by scope, and now notice what happens to this variable panel. I click on this one and that's it, right? As you can see now, it is showing me, Mukesh, you have got three variables. Main has one variable and input has got two variables, and this is very much useful to see the scope of the variables, right? In the previous one, we have to go through the complete variable panel and see which variable was lying here. Now with this option, we can actually go and see which variables are lying here, right? To toggle it off, you simply go and click on this one and that will give you to the default view, right? I found this feature pretty interesting. In the data manager panel, this is the feature which says group item by scope. Group item by scope to see the variable by scope, and group your variables into the panel depending on the scope which is assigned to them. Interesting one, right? Let's move forward. There is one more option here which says sync to the active scope. Now what exactly is this? Let me first demonstrate to you in the UiPath Studio so you will understand it clearly. I am back in my UiPath Studio, and as of now, if you would see here, this sync with active scope is disabled. I have not enabled it. When I click on this one, now I have enabled the sync of the data manager with my current open solution. Now what would happen? If I click on the input, let me just click on the data manager here and I'll pin this, right, so that we are able to see the difference. I have toggled this sync with active scope 1. If I click on the process, you would notice that now I am seeing only the variables which are available for the process panel. When I click on output, I am seeing only the one which are in the output one. Now you might be wondering why I am getting str name, because the scope is main, right? Just notice this. When I click on the input, all the three variables are showing up because these three variables has a scope of input, right? So if I just click on here like this, so this is also going to be very handy during the development. When I am writing the automation in the process, I can simply check here that which all variables are available for me. Rather than checking the complete scope of the variable, I can simply sync it with the active scope, right? Like this. To toggle it off, you simply click here and now you would be coming back to the default value. So sync to the active scope actually sync all the variables into the active scope. Pretty useful, right? Let me know if you found this feature useful by just commenting sync in the comments. Okay, let's move forward, guys. The interesting one. With this release, UiPath has introduced something which is called the global variables. As the name suggests, global variables. If you are coming from a UiPath background, you might know that when I need to pass the data from one XAML file to the other XAML file, we always needed to create arguments. Variables were restricted only to the XAML they were created, right? With the introduction of global variables, now I can pass the data between the two XAMLs without creating arguments. Sounds interesting? Let us see that in implementation in the UiPath Studio. Okay, so I am back in my UiPath Studio. I have this main sequence available here. Let me go here and I'll create a new sequence. I'll call this sequence as first sequence maybe, and I hit create. Okay, I'll go here and I'll create a new sequence. I'll call this sequence as second sequence and I hit create. Now, for example, I am writing an automation where I want to pass this variable, which is the name variable, which has a value of Mukesh, to the first sequence and the second sequence. Previously, what we needed to do, we needed to convert this to an argument and then we need to pass the argument in an in-out manner. How actually the global variables work here? All you have to do is, you have to go to the variable, whichever you want to pass, expand it like this, str name. The default value for the variable is Mukesh, and you would see something which is scope. So as of now, the variable is restricted only to this XAML, which is main. I select this scope and from here I'll select this one, which is called global. As soon as you change it to global, you would notice there is a small earth kind of symbol which is coming on top of it, indicating that now this variable has become a global variable. Now, if I just simply save this automation, this is a global variable. Phone number and age are not global variable. Now, how does the global variable look like? So, str name is created in this XAML, right? If I go to the first sequence, you would notice the global variable is automatically coming here. That means I can simply use a message box like this and simply use the global variable here like this, str underscore name. And when I am typing it, you would have noticed something, property global variable dot str underscore name as string, right? So this is a global variable. Now the global variable is given a default value in this here. This variable is now available in the first sequence. So if I save this, go here and say run the file, you would notice I am getting the output in the message box, and that too from the first sequence, right? So what I have done, I have created a variable and the scope of the variable is global. When I say the scope of the variable is global, that means that I have made it available to all the sequences or all the XAML file which are available in the automation. Interesting, right? Without the use of arguments, I have created the global variables in UiPath. Let me go back to the presentation and show you something more about it. Here, this is how we have seen that we can change the scope of the variable to global. Now there are something which you need to understand about the global variable, right? With the help of global variables, we are getting the reference of same variable to the multiple workflows without passing the arguments, which we have already seen. There is also a concept of constants which we are going to explore next. So please focus more on the global variables so that you are able to differentiate it with the constants. When you actually create the global variables, once it is created, we can edit the value, but we cannot edit the name, type or scope. Once a variable has been defined as a global variable, you cannot change its scope. What does that mean? Let me go back to my automation and see that thing in practice. This is a variable which has been created. Now, if I attempt to change this, if I click on edit variable, you would notice I can only change the value. I cannot change the scope, I cannot change the name, and I cannot change the data type as well, right? Let's try to do it in the actual where we created it, right here. If you see here, I say edit the variable, I cannot. So that means that once you create the global variable, you cannot change the name, you cannot change the data type, you cannot change the scope, but you can change the value, right? So from Mukesh, I can always change it to something else, right? I can change it to UiPath like this, okay? So this is one property of the global variable. It is not always like you need to convert the existing variable. When creating the new variable like this, directly you can change the scope of the variable to global. Okay, so let's say this is the global variable here created, and what is the value you want to give, right? But remember, once created you cannot edit the name, right? I hope that point is clear, that once you create the global variable you can only change the value. The next thing to remember here is that global variables cannot be used in isolated workflows. All the XAML files which are invoked using the isolated option cannot use the global variables. UiPath has an activity which is called the invoke workflow activity, which is used to invoke the XAML. When you use the invoke workflow activity, you have an option to say as isolated option. In the invoke workflow activity, if you go and select this option of isolated, you won't be able to utilize the functionalities of the global variables. So that is thing you need to remember, right? The last thing, the scope can be set to global. Now when you set to global, this means that it is set for the entire project, the current workflow, and all the containers in the current workflow. The default value is the current workflow, but you can always go and change it to here. But again repeating, you cannot edit the value, not the name, not the type or the scope. Once a variable is defined as global, you cannot come back. Okay, so I hope you understand what exactly is a global variable, how do you create it, and how do you pass across it to the different XAML. This is one of the best update which I found in this 2021-10. There are other good updates as well, but let me know your thoughts on the global variables. If you like this feature, just comment global in the comments. Okay, let's move forward. The next thing we have seen, creating the variable, editing the variable, creating the arguments, renaming the arguments, everything. There are some other things which are available in the context of variable and arguments both, which are how do you remove, convert, and finding the references. Let me quickly show it to you, all of these three one by one. So these all are available in the same menu, which is removing, converting, and the references. Okay, I'm going back to my UiPath Studio. I am back in my UiPath Studio. So let's say there is a variable which is this guy, integer underscore age. I no longer require this variable, integer age. I simply right click on it, and there is an option which says delete the variable. And that is how you delete the variable. I do not require this guy, right click on it and delete the variable. Same applies for the arguments as well. I do not require this argument, right click and delete the argument. Okay, let's say I have created this variable and later I found out that okay, I require actually it as an argument. Can I convert variable to an argument to variable? The answer is yes. This feature was always available in the previous version as well. In the newer version, you just have to come here, right click on the same menu, and you see you have an option which says convert to argument. When you convert it to argument, you would see that this int phone number is now an argument. To convert it back to a variable, right click again and convert to variable. So this option is available. You can do vice versa. The next feature is the find references, which simply means, let's say I have a big automation. As of now, I have main, first sequence, second sequence. I wanted to know which all places this integer phone number is getting reference to, which means that which all places this is getting used. So as of now, we are not using it anywhere. So let me just go to the activities and I'll just take a assign activity. Okay, drag and drop it here somewhere, and I just write here, let's say int phone number. This is of type integer, and I just type some number, random number here. Okay, save this. Now it might be a very big automation. I just simply right click on the variable and select find references. And you can see it is telling me that Mukesh, your int phone number is in the main sequence, process, assign, and this is the activity, right? So this is where it goes, right? In phone number 1366. Find references is absolutely useful when you want to know the references. The same option is applicable to the arguments as well. In the data manager, go to the arguments, right click on it and say find the references. So all the places where it is getting referenced, you will see it, right? As of now, nobody is using it, so it says 0. Coming back to my presentation, so we have seen how I can remove a variable, how you can convert a variable to argument and vice versa, right? And the last one, how you can actually use the find references. You simply have to right click on it and you will say find references, and it will show you all the references where exactly it is getting used. Next, we have something which is called copy and paste, which means that I can actually copy and paste the variables and the arguments. You simply have to right click, do a select, and then select, right click in the data manager in the scope where you want to paste it and do a Ctrl+V. Now whenever you are copy pasting a variable, let's say there is a variable which is called number, it already exists. What UiPath will do, it will actually create a variable and rename it to number_1. Absolutely simple feature. Let me quickly show it to you. I am in my UiPath data manager. This is the variable which I want to use. Right click, copy, and I just go here and I say right click and I say paste. So you would see int_phone number is created, same value, default value, everything. Then now you can actually go and rename it whatever you want to right here, right? So I just want to, let's say this is for the int_section maybe, yeah. So you can actually go and copy and paste the variables directly in the data manager panel here. Okay, and this _1, if you are having the same name already, it will just append it with an _1. Moving forward, we have an option of editing and removing the annotations from the variables and the arguments. Now, what exactly is annotation? Annotation is something when I want to give more additional information that why exactly I have created that variable. So as a good practice, it is always recommended to have annotations in the sequences flowchart, and you can also provide it on the top of the variable as well, right? So to do that, I am back into my UiPath Studio. Right click on any variable and you would have an option which says add annotation, right? So this is for int phone number. I say that this is a variable for storing the phone number. That's it. And you would see this comment kind of something which is coming on right in front of it. So you don't have to open and see the value. I can simply hover my mouse and you can see that this is a variable for storing the phone number. You have an option to pin the annotation as well, right? That's it. So that is how the annotation works. Annotation can be also available at the arguments level, right? So this one is argument annotation like this, and it is shown here. Okay, so I hope you understand what exactly is the annotation. You simply right click and provide the variable. Now there are something which you need to remember when working with annotation. Pinned annotations are displayed under the variables or the arguments panel when expanded. Okay, arguments and variables with unpinned annotation have an icon displayed in front of them. Okay, the pinned status of the annotation is saved. So when the project is closed or published as an template. So for example, if I create a template out of this complete solution, whatever I pin here, that would be available in the template as well. So just make sure that if you plan to create this automation for a template, it would be very good practice to provide the annotation here and then just pin it. Okay, so that was about adding and editing. Okay, so we have not seen how can I remove the annotation. I think you guys would have totally understood. You just have to right click there and remove the annotation. Let me quickly show it to you. So let's say I do not want this annotation anymore. I can right click on it and you have an option which says remove the annotation. I want to edit it, right click and edit the annotation. Absolutely simple option which you can just right click and try it yourself as well. Okay. The next feature which is available is the constants. Now, constants enable us to define the fixed value that do not change during the project execution. So take an example. If you are working on an automation where there is something, let's say the name of the company, the department name, which I am sure that is not going to change throughout the automation. In this, we have an option to create something which is called constant. Now constant have something which is called a fixed value and that will not change across the automation. Let us see how actually I can create constants in data manager and how do I use them. Also, we are going to see how does it differentiate from the global variables. Okay. I am back into my data manager. I have variables, arguments, connection. If you go here, you would see something which is called constants. And I am getting the constants menu, right? Let me just remove this connection and variable for a moment, right? So I have got 3 variables and I have got 0 constants. To create a constant, you simply have to click on this one, new constant. It is asking me, tell me the constant name, right? So let's say the constant name is the company name, which I'm sure that is not going to change. Now, constant cannot be of any type. As of now, you can create constant of text, number, boolean, number with decimal, date and the duration, which is nothing but a timestamp. Unlike the global variable, you can only create constant of these data type. You cannot create constant for anything, right? You cannot create constant for a list. That is not available here. So I go here, company name as text, and let me just put here my channel name, right? That is tutorials by Mukesh Kala, right? Let's say this is the name of the constant which I do not want to change, company name, and I hit create. As soon as you create it, you would see inside the constant, you would have this option which says company name. How do I use a constant? Exactly the same thing. I go to the second sequence, and if you see here, you are seeing the global variable and you are seeing the constant as well, right? Let me go here and take a message box. Drag and drop the message box here. And here, let's try to use the constant, which is the company name, right? So I go here, company name, and you would notice that this is a read only property. Read only means I cannot change it. Company name. Save this, go here and I say run the file. Now you notice I have created a constant which is having the company name and I am trying to use it in a piece of an automation and I am getting the value in the message box which is tutorials by Mukesh Kala. Now I am also able to use this str name as well, which is also available in the first sequence. This is also available in the second sequence as well. Now what is the difference? The difference is that if I take a assign activity, okay, like this, now you see here, this is the global variable whose value is UiPath and name is str name. So if I go here and I say str underscore name and I give it a new value, and in the message box I am trying to print the new value. So if you see here, str name is a global variable whose value is UiPath. In the second sequence, I have given a new value to the global variable. Let's try to go here and I say run the file. The default value of the global variable is UiPath. I came in the second sequence and I updated that global value to a new value. So I'm getting something called a new value. So that means that the global variable can be given a new value. Let's try to do the same thing for the constant, which is the company name. So if I go here and I try to write company name, UiPath will not allow you to do so, right? So I hope you understand how do you create constant and how do you use it in the automation. There is one property about the constant which you need to take care of. You cannot edit its value, not its name, type or scope. You cannot edit anything, right? Once a constant is created, it's created. You can always go and delete it. That is always available. Concepts are not available in the window legacy project. Whenever we start an automation, it asks you that which kind of project you want to create. I'll create a separate video on this one, but as of now, just remember that constants are not available in the Windows legacy project. Now, how do you create a constant? Open the data manager panel, right click on the constant, provide the information. These are all the types which are available. Managing the constant, you can expand it to change the value, expand it, create a new value, to delete, right click and delete, right? Let me quickly show it to you how can we do that. So this is on the constant panel. Let's say now instead of this, I want to change the constant value to something else. So I can go here and I can change the constant value to here, but I cannot change it during the automation, right? I cannot change the constant name here. I can say edit constant. I am only getting the option to edit the value. To delete it, say delete the constant. Save this and your automation is done, right? To create a new constant, again create on new constant. So I hope you understand how do you manage the constants in the data manager in the UiPath Studio. Okay. Let me know in the comments, what do you think about the constant? Is it useful? Yes, no, maybe. Let me know in the comments. Okay. Moving forward, data manager also allows us to manage the processes, assets and the queues. Now this is nothing but the resources of the orchestrator. UiPath Studio by default is connected to the orchestrator, and then in the orchestrator we have certain folders which are available. With the help of data manager, we can actually manage the process, assets and the queues. This is available both for the classic and the modern folders. UiPath Orchestrator has two kind of folders, the classic and the modern folders. Either way, you are going to get these options in the data manager. How to use? To use a process, asset or the queue, we simply can drag and drop it from the studio, from the data manager directly to the panel. Depending on the type of resource you drag from the data manager, you will get the next set of activities. For example, if you drag and drop a process, you will get an invoke process. If you drag an asset, you will get the asset related activities. Okay, let us quickly see that in action in the UiPath Studio data manager. So I am back into my data manager. I click on this button, which is the filter one, which we have explained. I'll remove the variables and arguments and let's focus on queues, assets and processes. Now if you are looking here, I am getting all the resources from this folder, which is the admin folder, right? So this is my tenant which I am connected to, and this I have connected to the admin folder. So all the queues which are available here, I can see here, all the assets are available here, and these are all the processes which are available here. Now what all options I see here? Let's say I want to use this in my automation, my SAP credential. I just drag and drop it here like this, and UiPath will ask me which asset related activity you want to use. I want to use the get credential. Double click on it and it will automatically populate the folder name and the asset for me. Okay, let's try it something else. Let's say queue. This is the Acme queue. I drag and drop the queue here. UiPath is asking me which activity you want to use with the queue. I say I want to use this activity called get queue items. Folder selected, queue item selected. Now you are free to customize it, right? If you simply right click on any of the asset, let's say this one, Instagram, right click on it, you would have an option, two options actually, copy and view asset. What does this copy will do? This will copy this name of the asset, so you don't have to type it here. So this seems to be a very long one. Snow integration client secret information. I do not want to remember this variable name. I can right click, copy. Once it is copied, you can simply paste it here. That's it, right? So that is what the copy does. You can simply click on this button which says view asset. If you click on this, it will directly navigate you to the cloud.uipath.com or whatsoever orchestrator you are connected to, and it will directly take you to the asset page. So as you can see, it has directly taken me to the cloud.uipath.com, the orchestrator I am connected to in the asset, and I am directly into the asset, right? So that option is available here. You just go here and click on view asset. The same option is applicable to the queues. The same option is applicable to the processes as well, right? If you don't want to see these options, you can simply click on this button and just remove them like this. I hope now you understand how does the process asset and this queue things work. You just simply have to drag and drop, right click and explore the option. There is one other option which is available at the top of the data manager panel, which is called the refresh button. Now what does that mean? Let's say sometime you created an asset in the orchestrator and that asset is not reflecting in the data manager panel. You simply have to click on the refresh button at the top. This is what the refresh button looks like. You simply have to come here, click on this button refresh, and that will refresh you the entire resources once again. This is typically useful when you create resources and that are not reflecting here. Okay. So this we have explained with the help of refresh button. Okay. Next, we have something which is called namespaces, and this is the last feature which I want to talk today. Namespaces are used to know the dependencies or to import the dependencies which we want to use in the automations, right? Now in the data manager, you have a separate section for the namespaces where you can actually add and remove the namespaces. Let me quickly show it to you on the panel. So I am back into my data manager. I click on this button and I just select namespaces. Now this option shows me all the namespaces which my automation as of now is importing. If I want to import a new namespace, I simply have to go here, right click on it and add namespace, and it will show me all the namespaces which are available here, right? So this is nothing but the import section which we used to see here. It's now available here. I can click on view all the 20s and you would see all the namespaces as of now which are being referenced here, right? So that option is available in the namespaces panel. Okay, and then there is this button which says refresh. You can refresh the existing ones once you add it. Okay, so now let's have a quick recap. Today we have seen what exactly is the 2022.10 release theme. We have explored the CoachMark Navigator. A majority of the time we have explored the data manager panel, filter option, how I can create a variable, argument, show data manager, bulk create, sort and edit, group by, sync, global variables, how do you convert, remove and reuse the references, how do you add and edit annotation, what exactly are the constants, how you can utilize and manage processes, assets, queues and the namespaces. So this was overall which we have covered today for the 2022.10 update. I hope you enjoyed this session. If that is the case, please let me know in the comment which is the best feature which you have found and which you are going to try directly. In the upcoming videos of the update series, I'll try to explore more of the features which are available in this release. Having said that, I would like to wrap this video here. Thank you for watching. If you like this video, please do subscribe to the channel and happy automation.